Interesting, exciting, fast, emotional, expressive. Have you ever felt like the official history of humanity is incomplete? Like there are ripped-out pages, erased paragraphs, and entire chapters that someone deliberately locked away under 7 seals? We're fed this convenient linear fairy tale, from cave people with clubs to pyramid builders, and finally to us today. It's neat, simple, and completely wrong. All those popular online lists of forbidden discoveries are just the tip of the iceberg. They show you the shiny distractions, the trinkets, while the real foundational mysteries stay hidden in the shadows. But today, we're not playing those games. We're diving deeper. This list won't include fakes, made-up alien artifacts, or overhyped nonsense. Before we get to the main part, we'd love a little support from you. A like and subscribe would be the best thanks. Appreciate it. Let's kick off our countdown with something tangible, small, but so out of place that it shreds the very fabric of time. Romania, 1974. Construction workers are digging a trench along the Mureș River, about 10 meters deep. Around them are mastodon bones, those ancient elephant-like giants, at least 20,000 years old by conservative estimates. And right there, among these fossil remains, the workers find a metal wedge. At first glance, it's just an ordinary tool. But when it's sent for analysis, the lab falls dead silent. Composition: 90% aluminum. 90%! Now, a quick metallurgy lesson for anyone who skipped chemistry class. Aluminum doesn't occur in pure form in nature. It's the product of a complex technological process that requires electricity, lots of it. Humanity only figured out how to mass produce it in the late 19th century. Yet this wedge, covered in a thick oxide layer that formed over millennia, was lying next to mastodon bones. Analysis of the oxide film delivered a shocking result. The object's age is around 250,000 years. What does that mean? It means that 250,000 years before we officially discovered aluminum, someone was already making parts out of it. And not just any parts. The wedge's shape eerily resembles a landing gear support for an aircraft. Coincidence? Maybe. But when this inconvenient artifact was slated for deeper study, the story took a familiar turn. It wasn't banned by law, it was just tucked away, locked in a museum storage in Cluj-Napoca. Any attempts by independent researchers to access it hit a polite but impenetrable wall of denial. In academic circles, discussing it became bad form, a sign of tabloid sensationalism and unprofessionalism. The Aiud Wedge isn't just a puzzle. It's a fragment of technology that either proves an Earth civilization existed long before ours or suggests it's not from Earth at all. And while it sits under lock and key, we can only speculate which option scares the establishment more. From an impossible object, let's move to an impossible story carved in stone. 1898, Minnesota. A Swedish immigrant farmer named Olof Oman is uprooting a tree on his land and stumbles upon a massive slab of gray sandstone, entangled in roots. On the slab are strange symbols, runes. When the inscription was deciphered, it shocked the entire American historical community. The text claimed that in 1362, a group of 30 Norwegian and Swedish explorers reached these lands 130 years before Columbus. You'd think jackpot, but instead of triumph, Olof Oman got a bucket of cold water dumped on him. Academics, linguists, and historians pounced on the stone like vultures. The runes were wrong, the language too modern, the engraving looked too fresh for 500 years in the ground. The farmer, who wasn't even trying to sell the stone or profit from it, was essentially accused of crafting an elaborate forgery. And here's where it gets really interesting. Debates over authenticity are normal scientific practice, but with the Kensington Runestone, something else happened. It became a toxic taboo. Any self-respecting archaeologist or historian who dared publicly entertain the idea of its authenticity committed career suicide. Grant applications to study it were rejected without review. Articles defending it weren't accepted in scholarly journals. Professors in universities openly advised students, "Want a degree? Stay away from this topic." This is an unspoken ban, far more effective than any official law. It works through fear, of ridicule, of losing reputation and livelihood. Why? Because acknowledging the stone's authenticity means rewriting the entire history of America's discovery. It means admitting that long before Columbus, Europeans weren't just landing on the coast, they were penetrating deep into the continent. And that shatters the established, convenient, and most importantly, politically sanitized worldview. So the stone sits in a small museum in Alexandria, Minnesota, as a monument not so much to Vikings as to academic cowardice. If a stone in Minnesota can shake the history of a whole continent, what about a structure capable of upending the history of all human civilization? For that, we'll have to descend to the ocean floor, off the coast of Japan's Yonaguni Island. In 1986, a local diver hunting hammerhead shark schools accidentally stumbled on something mind-boggling. Underwater, at depths from 5 to 40 meters, sprawls a gigantic monument. And we're not talking shapeless rocks here. We're talking massive platforms, perfectly flat terraces, steps with precise 90-degree angles. One structure, resembling a pyramid, rises 27 meters from the seafloor, all carved from a single rock massif. Geologist Masaaki Kimimura from the University of the Ryukyus has spent decades arguing it's man-made. Nature doesn't create such symmetrical and complex forms. By his estimates, the complex was built when this land was still above water, at least 10,000 years ago. Think about it, 5,000 years before the first Egyptian pyramids, 6,000 years before Stonehenge. And what's the reaction from official authorities and the global scientific community? Deafening silence. The Japanese government refuses to recognize the complex as a cultural heritage site. Funding requests for serious research are denied. Foreign teams of archaeologists and geologists are effectively barred, not by direct ban, but through bureaucratic red tape and permit denials. The official stance: insufficient evidence of artificial origin. But there's more to it. Acknowledging Yonaguni as human-made would collapse the entire timeline of civilization's development. It would mean that at the end of the Ice Age, an unknown culture existed with incredible engineering skills, a culture capable of processing and moving gigantic stone blocks, a culture from which nothing remains except the submerged ghost city. That's too inconvenient a question. It's much easier to leave it on the ocean floor, letting currents and time slowly erase the traces until the mystery fades away on its own. An underwater city is shocking, but what if I told you we have proof that ancient map makers knew much more about the world than we can imagine? In 1929, in the library of Istanbul's Topkapi Palace, a map was discovered drawn in 1513 by Ottoman admiral and cartographer Piri Reis. He honestly noted that he used about 20 older sources, including maps from Alexander the Great's time and even earlier. On this map, the coasts of Africa and South America are depicted with stunning accuracy. But that's not the main thing. The most mind-blowing part, at the southern tip, the coastline of Antarctica is detailed. That same Antarctica humanity officially discovered only 300 years later in 1820. And that's not all. On Piri Reis's map, Antarctica is shown without its ice sheet. Geological data confirms the coastline under kilometers of ice really looks like what the Ottoman admiral drew, and it was last ice-free at least 6,000 years ago. So, Piri Reis had access to maps compiled thousands of years before him, when Antarctica was a green continent. Who could have made such maps? What civilization had global cartography tech in prehistoric times? This artifact became a headache for historians. It's impossible to ignore. It's physical. But explaining it within the accepted paradigm is impossible too. So the simplest path was chosen: silence. The map is stored in Topkapi Palace, but rarely displayed publicly. In most history textbooks, you won't find a word about it. It's become forbidden not because it's hidden, but because it simply refused discussion, ignored as an annoying anomaly that spoils the neat picture of the world. We're used to thinking of ancient Greeks as philosophers and sculptors, not engineers building complex machines. That stereotype was shattered in 1901 when sponge divers found a sunken Roman ship off the Greek island of Antikythera. Among statues and amphoras was a chunk of bronze tossed into the basement of Athens' National Archaeological Museum.